Probably one of the biggest COVID-19 stories right now is that a group of international scientists, including notably two top outgoing FDA officials, have concluded that boosters are not needed, at least for now. So there was a paper published in The Lancet on Monday that kind of detailed their conclusion. So Brian, what's behind this reasoning, and does it mean anything for the top vaccine stocks?
Yeah, so the basic idea here is that you might get sick because your antibody levels have waned over time, but you have other defenses that can kick in eventually, and so you're not likely to get that sick. So you're not likely to have severe disease. So they're arguing that the risk of the side effects from the vaccine don't justify the benefits from the booster, because if you're not going to die from it, and you might, if you're whatever rate you're going to die from it, you compare that to the rate of dying from risks of the side effects. It's kind of hard to quantify. Maybe I'll give you an example. Like, let's take the common cold. If I could make it so you never got the common cold, but there was a 5% chance of dying, I mean, I think most people would say, I'm not gonna do that. I don't like getting the cold, but I don't like a 5% chance of dying. But then if I drop it to 0.5%, probably not. 0.05%, probably not, because the common cold is not going to kill you. But at some point, we've got an infinitesimal chance of you dying versus you not having to deal with a cold for the rest of your life. And especially if you've got a long life ahead of you, maybe at some point it's worth taking that risk, but it's hard to say exactly where that should be. And this example is just sort of a two-sided example. There's a lot more that goes into questions for boosters. You got mild versus severe disease, and then you've got multiple different side effects, working into the potential. So I think it's a really difficult, it's a difficult calculation to make, but they've made it, and they've said that they've come on the side of the fact that that the boosters aren't worth it right now. Then they caveat that with they could be needed later if the antibodies continue to wane, or if the rest of your immune system wanes, or if we get a variant that's even stronger that might skew it ahead, skew the risk reward profile towards boosters. I'd also note that the WHO officials were also involved in writing this article, and they're obviously more concerned with the disease globally. So there's the concern that if we use the boosters, then if we're supply constrained, then those boosters won't be available for countries with low vaccination rates elsewhere. And this isn't just like an ethical argument over who should get the boosters. And it's arguably vaccinations elsewhere will help people in the US, because the rampant spread of the virus elsewhere increases the likelihood of new variants that can then come back into the US, and if they're even more deadly, can overpower the boosters that we got. So there's that argument too, that we could use those boosters to slow the spread, which might actually help us more than giving us the boosters will. So there's a lot of things that factor in here. Shares of Moderna and BioNTech dropped on the news that when this article came out, and that seems completely reasonable. The valuations of these companies assume that the boosters will be needed, and I'd argue that not only are they assuming that a third booster shot will be needed, but they're really expecting a fourth and fifth, and so on, to really justify their valuations, especially Moderna's that's gotten above 170 million or so.
Brian, what's your take? I mean, just your opinion. Is there enough evidence, do you think, for the US to move forward with booster doses at this point?
I think there's probably enough evidence for some populations that are sicker, that are more likely to die if you get the disease. It's more likely to progress to severe disease. I think in those populations, I think there's probably enough evidence to justify boosters. But I think in the healthy people, I think the jury's still out and leaning towards not requiring the boosters. So we'll have to wait and see what the FDA does on Friday. The FDA advisory committee does on Friday, and then whether the FDA makes a fairly quick decision. And then even then, the FDA could approve the boosters, but then it goes to the CDC, and the CDC's vaccine committee, which is not a advisory committee. It's a I mean, they make I mean, I guess they make a recommendation, but it's more firm. The CDC, it's part of the CDC, so they're going to, that's what's going to be the law of the land, and so doctors are going to follow the CDC's recommendation. So the FDA could approve the boosters, and then the CDC could come out and say, yeah, we only think they should be used in a certain population, or we don't think they should be used right now, but we'll continue to monitor the situation. So even the FDA decision is not going to be the final event here in whether we need boosters.